G'day, gang. Simo and Ed back again for another episode of the Fireside Track Growth Show. But this time, we're turning it up a notch. We've got Ryan.
G'day, everyone.
What we're going to talk about today is strange things happen when you have a chat with a mechanic. So it's going to be a two-part episode. So this is the first part. Have a look at what happens when we chat to a mechanic. Owners are always complaining about mechanics. Either they can't get them or, they can't get good ones. And I understand that because, you can see it by some of the quality of the questions in the Mechanics Academy.
And most of the time, it's actually just the know-how, what they need to do next. And the communication breakdown there mainly is because 9 times out of 10, the owners of those karting facilities actually don't know what to do themselves, and they rely on the mechanic. Well, we hired you. You should know what to do, even though they come from a bike shop or whatever it is. It's not the same. It's still a different ball game, and it's not just been a mechanic, to change a tire. There's a lot of other things, detailed stuff that has to be involved. Things like safety. What are the safety measures in a go-kart? What are the safety measures in the workshop itself? What access to other members of the team need to, the track marshals, do they need to come in the workshop? What if there's a situation that happens with the track marshal? Who's at fault? And a lot of that time, there's none of that education to the mechanic, because a mechanic, he's in charge of that workshop. Once he's in there and he's the head of the mechanics, he may have a small team, 2-3 other people, but there's always got to be, like, say, a workshop manager for say. And that's where the breakdown is between the workshop manager or the person in charge to do the maintenance, to the head office, to the admin department, and then obviously which leads to the head of the business. And that now is a good, I think, where Fastline as a whole can actually come in and step in, is to help that communication. Just talk about that slides and stuff that we had yesterday, Simon. Very important to have that 3-way communication, the owner, the manager, and the mechanic. And because it's not only just in case one leaves, then you got someone to talk to. No, it's actually to get an understanding of how the business is operating, how it's run, and what is the forward thinking for that business or entertainment place. And because, a karting facility, an indoor place or an outdoor place might not only just have go-karts. They might have quad bikes, they might have electric cars, they might have, a lot of all the different varieties of entertainment that will still have the mechanic as the maintenance operator, the guy that, or the lady that's going to maintain these things. And that's where the biggest breakdown is the lack of education, number one, to the owner of what to do in the workshop, and number two, the mechanic of how to actually run the workshop. And then the two need to combine, and the gelling of that is the breakdown. So yeah, it's a big hole, it's a big gap, and I think we as Fastline can actually close that off. We can bring that gap closer.
Well, what should the strategy look like between mechanic and track owner?
Guaranteed weekly strategy. So once a week, sit down, have a coffee. What are your problems? What did you find this past week? And that's from the owner. It has to start from the owner. But it's got to be on a communication basis where the mechanic doesn't feel pressurized to say things when they're not supposed to. Oh no, everything worked out well. Scared that if he says, oh, it didn't work out well, why didn't it work out well? And then gets fired, or she gets fired. That's the training that needs to happen. It's got to be a mutual team meeting, Fastline way of culture. Just sit down, talk about it, move on, because that's the only way you can achieve anything.
So in an ideal world though, so what's the track owner realistically looking to get out of that conversation? And then what's the mechanic looking to get from it? What does the ideal look like?
Okay, to answer the first question, they're looking at reliability. Do I need to get money now to fix a problem? And that is either giving free rides because 3 carts were down, and a group of 10 only had 4 carts, and so that's what the first question today. The second one is actually just maintenance, where the owner needs to have confidence to sell his carts or her carts, knowing that he has a team that can if they have a meeting every Monday morning, for example, and they're doing maintenance, Monday's a day closed because they're doing maintenance, track, whatever, that's the perfect time to have an hour session, 2-hour session, and go through the problems. And what the owner needs to get from that is confidence, number one, that he has a team that can provide him profitability operations within a weekly basis. Every Monday, he's got to look at it and say, okay, what happened this past week? How many events do we have? How many bookings do we have? How many walk-ins do we have? And then he also got to look at talking to his marketing team to say, okay, what are people saying now? Because all of that got to gel in as a collective thing. You know, you can't have the marketing department going, on Facebook, this is what they're saying about us stuff. And then you get in the mechanic saying, there's no problems. Everything was hunky-dory. Obviously there's a breakdown. You know, there's something that wasn't working. Obviously, a lot of the times, mostly on weekends, you find a lot of the track owners will be hands-on. But it's those bookings that sometimes may be an issue where they won't be there to handle those bookings and they rely on their managers. So this is where, if I was in a realistic world, if I was an owner, I would look at all these things and say, okay, right, collectively, we have this meeting, collectively, what are the problems? And if the problems are coming mainly starting from, where it is, the workshop, if the carts are on track and they look dirty, they look appalling, the things are falling off, they're not stopping because they don't have brake pads from fast line, all those kind of things. They
All of that.
They need to have those kind of parts, and then the carts will stop. But that now it's a chain reaction. It always leads to other problems, because it starts from the counter. A walk-in walks in, they get a ride, they go and sit down, they wait for their ride. Everything is fine. They jump in the cart, doesn't work, they didn't get a proper ride, or whatever the case is, the track marshals were rude, or whatever the case is, right? They come in, what they're going to attack? They're going to attack the front counter, and then that now is already a communication breakdown, because the front counter is not talking to the track marshals. The track marshals are not talking to the workshop, because it's a chain reaction. Now on Monday, that's what you need to sort out. Even as an owner can see the problems, walk in there, see the problems, see where the issues are, but professionally can't actually go out and start performing, and throwing toys out the cart in front of customers. So that Monday meeting, that's where an owner needs to gain confidence in his stuff. And mainly it's just all about confidence, because if you have confidence in who you have, if you have belief, like what I was told with Simon yesterday, if you have belief and you have confidence, you can sell, and you sell more, and you can go and get sponsorship, and you can, because it's out there. You got something to sell, and people are talking about it. And that's what the world these days is all about. It's about social media. It's about how many views you get, and that's what the world is about these days. It's not about, go to Joe's place down the road. You can have a fun as much as you want. These days, you need to attract more now, because things are a lot more technology-wise in terms of computers, phones, that kind of stuff. It's no more word of mouth. So that is very, very important. And then again, if you go to a Qantas plane, for example, and you're advertising in a magazine behind the seat of a Qantas plane, Qantas got to be happy enough that you're actually advertising something of good quality based on Australian standards. And that's where it starts. So, Qantas can't advertise your place. I'm just using Australia, for example. Sorry, guys, but I'm just using
I've seen Australian standards. I can't comment.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about. But at the international stage now, you need to have.
I've only upset a nation.
I know. I've seen UK standards as well, so we can.
It's interesting, because do you ever there'll be instances, I'm guessing, where people are coming off the track, and the marshals might see it where somebody's trying to get rid of oil off the trousers they've been in one of the carts.
Yep.
So how does the communication channel open up? The track owner may not see that. So what has to happen to make sure that if there's oil on the jeans, the mechanic might have to know how does that communication channel work?
Okay, so first priority, first protocol, track marshal, make sure that the client is happy. Apologize, be very respectful, not too much in a state that it looks like it's not like it's natural. It just happens all the time, but just like, oh, we never seen that before, and just have a kind of like a storyline, but be apologetic at the same time. And unfortunately, from that point now, the track marshal needs to comfort the customer first, take them inside, so hey, talk to whoever's in charge on that night, the manager, whoever, and let the manager deal with the customer. Straight away, that marshal needs to go and take that cart, whatever number, put it aside, take it to the workshop, and have a decent conversation. Hey, Martin or Martha, look at this. This is what happened. We've got a client that's not so there. Please, can we assist? Can we make that happen? Now, attitude is also important in this instance. You got to work as a team. It's a team sport. If you can't play footy or rugby or soccer, and you're all doing your own thing. Like a striker won't pass the ball. You'll be drilled at. You'll be given in the dressing room. You'll be shouted at badly. But you can't really do that on the field. And it's the same thing in this kind of industry. You have to try and not use my language if I can, piss anybody off, but just go and say, hey, this is what's happened. This cart has to come off. Now, here's a perfect scenario. There's only 6 carts that are operating, and 2 of them are leaking oil like that. Now the mechanic is under pressure because he's got 4 or 5 bookings that he has to get up, and he has to fix 2 carts, and there's also a accelerator cable that just snapped. So, it's now that communication now, where it puts pressure on the mechanic that leads to that conversation to the owner of that business. Because now the mechanic is put under pressure thinking, oh, I've ordered these parts. I've told them about these issues for 3 months now. And now I'm under pressure at 7 o'clock at night and I can't get them. People are shouting. I'm getting the counters coming to the workshop and complaining about me and the carts. And that's, so it's, again, it boils down to that chain reaction. So the marshal is got to take priority, the customer, always. Customer comes first, right? Make sure the customer is comfortable, because you don't want the customer to go into the booking area or the cafe area and now perform and complain to everybody, even to strangers. Be careful, don't jump in these cars, you're going to be like a grease monkey when you come up. You don't want that. So what you got to do is try and comfort that customer first. And then the marshal now can't be scared to go and talk to mechanic, because sometimes the mechanics feel like they're bigger than the marshal because they handling the carts. So at that stage, it's got to be, this hierarchiness must stop, because I've seen it all too often, too much hierarchiness. And yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, that got to stop when you're on when you're doing maintenance work, like on a Monday when there's nobody there. You can have those kind of like discussions one-on-one, but when it's out on an operating day and evening, it's got to be that education to the marshal. Because if you go online now and you look at around the world at karting jobs, for example, you'll see we need track marshals, we need mechanics. Those are the 2 main ones. You don't see a lot of admin and marketing, and because the owner wants to keep that very close and tight to themselves. So they will manage that themselves and have 1 or 2 people that they can trust. But when it comes to the stuff on the ground, actually running the stuff, they don't care if they hire, say, a 16-year-old now and then fire them the next day. They're not worried, But that's where the issue is. That's where the big problem is. They need to have a training manual. They need to understand who's who in the zoo. They need to know what to do when the situation happens. And all too often I see, especially with the newer tracks that have come up with these, Saudi carts, CRG, everything comes as new package, and it's nice. Everything nice, blue lights everywhere, fluorescent lights here and there, nice cafe. And then let those things start getting old. And then you start seeing all the problems. Now the issue that they will have there is that they won't have any plan for that. They won't have any training manuals if anything has to happen. They rely on Saudi being perfect. I'm just using Saudi as an example. That's where you get an issue. And then you start having problems. And then you start losing clientele. Then you start losing business, because you don't foresee these kind of issues. And that's where the breakdown is. And that Monday meeting is very important to educate that. And I think as Fastline, we can actually educate even the new track owners on those kind of situations. these is what possibilities can happen. This can happen. This shouldn't happen, and you have this ability to train, so you can train staff members like the track marshals. Track marshals, mechanics are one of the biggest downfalls of any hire kart facility or entertainment facility, is because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones that are normally talking to the clients all the time. Oh mate, which is the fastest kart here? Then you get a 16-year-old saying, oh, that one there, and then they jump in it and it's the slowest kart. Then they complain, why are the cars not the same? And then it starts now that chain reaction now. Oh no, because it's a mechanic's job. They can say those things. To them, it's a job. They're not trained not to say those things. And those are the kind of educational, but it has to come from the top. And a lot of the times, track owners actually get bored of their business or get tired very quickly because they're the ones doing that all the time. They're not training people to be proactive in that kind of sense. So yeah, sorry, I know it was a bit long, but I just tried to get a bit of a picture of how the communication breakdown is. And there's a good point what you mentioned there, because if you ask any track marshal, what do you do if this situation happens? They go, oh, I'll just give my mate over there. They're always passing it on to somebody else, until it gets to the owner, and by that time the client's not happy. You've got a bad rapport on social media. There's walk-ins coming in and someone's walking past the walk-ins and say, be careful when you go in there. It's got to start from there first. It's got to give the comfort to the client, to the customer. And then most importantly, it's the mechanic's job to make sure that what he's sending out the workshop, he should be proud of, or she should be proud of. Not just throw things out there.
Well, I just to say, just on that point, I think a complaint's handled really well in speed and efficiency.
Yep.
Can still lead to a 5-star review.
Yeah,
100%.
It can lead to a happier customer.
Yes.
I've seen it time and time again.
If you feel like you're going to be looked after, even when there's a problem, you're okay to go back there.
You're okay.
You know it's a one-off.
Correct.
And I mean, it's interesting what you say. And if I think about the kart centres I've been to, usually the mechanic is hidden away somewhere.
Don't see them.
They're down the back of the track.
Yep.
Or they're underneath the bridge. And
they don't actually, most of the time, they don't see what's happening on track. They're hearing from either, most of the time it's the marshals, because the marshals are bringing the broken stuff back or something that needs to be fixed. And then that's also now a bad report because the mechanic needs to see what's going on.
You've worked in how many different kart centres now?
6 in total. Obviously, the longest ones was Fast Lane and Kingston Park. But most of my training comes from international professional racing. In professional teams in Europe and actually for example, the Intrepid Junior team. I ran the Intrepid Junior team, which Mick Doohan was part of. He was the head of it, and I ran his son Jack right up until he went to Europe to go and do Formula 2. Well, he started off in the other leagues, but you get what I'm saying. And even there, you still see the issues because, for example, a father will come and say, "Why is my son slow?" And he comes and attacks you, but not necessarily the driver or the equipment. So it's the same thing when a client comes in. Why is my kart slow? And they're not necessarily going to attack. Well, they do actually. Most of the time they attack the marshal because that's the first person they see. And then the marshal feels small and they run away and they don't give that, the customer service that's required. And then it's now goes to the head who's running the show, and it becomes a nightmare. So yes, to continue your question.
I think you can beat that problem before it occurs.
Yeah,
it's part of the safety briefing. Matt passed on the safety briefing, but at some point they go, here's the 4 key factors that affect the speed of your cars, and all 4 of those are related to stuff the driver can do. When they go, how come my kart's going slow? You can go, well, what were the 4 things? Get them to repeat them, and what they've immediately done is they've honed back in on themselves rather than the kart's problem, which would help in positioning.
For sure. So, I'll give you an example. The perfect example is actually Fast Lane in Sydney. They had a workshop next to where the people could actually jump into the go-karts. So quite close to each other. So from the door, 2 big doors, you can actually see what was happening, with the clients going in and out coming off the track, going onto the track, and you can actually see the track. It was right in front of you. It was good, but it was also bad at the same time. Because if you've got a go-kart and you're welding a frame up and someone's about to jump in a go-kart and they're looking at another go-kart being welded up, that was an issue. So we ended up putting up a barrier, which worked perfectly well because now they couldn't see what was happening in the workshop. But you could still stand as a mechanic and look at the track and see what is going on. So what we've done is we took away that thought of the cutter breaking because there's someone that's welding there to, oh man, this is the best ride ever in an instant. And it's just those simple things. Most of the time it's actually thinking out the box, just to analyze, put yourself in their shoes. If you jump in that car and you see that, what's going to happen? What do you think? And so that's the kind of education that I would like to give. And I was being given it to all the new guys that came into the businesses. And I think it did. I don't know if it helped them, but I think it did in most instances. I know for a fact in both places, Fast Lane and Kingston Park, I did make a huge improvement. I'm not trying to boast myself, but I did make a huge improvement that, it turned out to generating sales, double the wealth on the weekly basis, which ended up in a monthly quadruple the sales that they got. So, and that was just purely maintenance and talking to the track marshals. I could go and talk to John and say, hey, John, I see that you had a problem with that client, with their customer. What happened? Oh man, Ryan, this cart here for the last 3 sessions now, it's been giving problems. And I'll say, okay, right, why don't you come bring it in? They say, oh, we don't have enough carts. So already there now, there was that barrier between the marshal and the mechanic, like saying, no, but I can fix it quickly. It's a quick fix. You don't have to go for 3 sessions a whole day with a broken cart because you don't have enough carts. Let's plan this together. Now, the track marshal, the mechanic, and the race organizer, who actually puts the people in the carts, we have a discussion. Okay, who's the next group? Can we swap that group around? Okay, we don't need 6 carts because there's only 4 people there. So this cart here, for that 1 session, it'll take me this long to fix it. Now we have that communication. Guess what happens? They got more carts now, even a spare one in the next session. Yeah. And it's just that communication that is very, very key. But if you don't have that communication, it's quite.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's easy for me to go, finding maintenance isn't the cost. It's going to be a revenue generator. But
that's right. Yeah.
I really like that idea. If you get that maintenance right, how it leads to sales. I really like the idea of communication anyway. But I think as well as the one-to-one, potentially with the track owner and the mechanic, it sounds like there needs to be a group meeting there with marketing, with the head of the track marshals or a couple of them, and the mechanic, and the general manager and track owner. And that would be a really good conversation piece to go and really set up the culture.
Yep.
And if you get that right, wow,
you're gonna take off, because now it's a team. It's a team effort. Yeah. You know exactly what to do. The marshal won't be scared to talk to anybody. He'll just go straight up. Sally, this is the situation with the carts. Can we do this here? Can we do that? Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's do this. Then you just communicate. Sometimes I do understand that a booking is a booking and you can't change the time frame of those bookings.
Yeah.
There's still ways of doing those bookings. There's still ways. You can't just say, okay, there's a group of 10 and they all want to go out at the same time. You can just split it up a bit, because after these next 2 or 3 bookings, you got a time slot, because a lot of people are not coming there for that hour and then leaving. They're coming to have go-kart rides, no matter how long it takes, because they don't know how long it takes for each session. And that's where a lot of the education to the marshals and even the ladies that sell the races, they need to have those communications, because it's important to gel on the ground. Then it's easier to sell on the top. If you that's where it is. And if you can gel,
I love that saying. It's easier to gel on the ground than it is to sell on the top.
If you get the gel on the ground, on the foundation, it's easier to sell on the top, because why? You got somewhere to stand on all the time. You've got a foundation that's holding you, so you can dance with your hands all over, but you're grounded at the bottom. And that's where the beauty of it is.
Your hands in the air like you just don't care. We're gonna get this sorted.
Cool. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll do a few more of these with Ryan, because Ryan's just come on board as Fastline's technical advisor. So you should be hearing from him soon. And he wants to find out what, you know, what issues are you having with parts, you know, in your karts. And we're going to try and help you solve them. Anyway, it's Uru from me.
Uru from me.
And we'll see you next time.
Adios.